Hi Vu, welcome to the new podcast, Vietnam Uncut.
Vietnam Uncut.
Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we're in Ta Cafe at the moment in Ta Hien. So like we spoke a bit before this, what I want to get out of this is basically talking to people about business in Vietnam, doing business in Vietnam, especially as a foreigner, and the kind of challenges and things that poses. So starting off, so you're a Canadian with a Vietnamese heritage.
Mm-hmm.
So what led you to move back to Vietnam?
Well, the first time I came here was with my dad. I think that was like 2004 or so. And the first time I came back here, I was born here, but at age 2 we all immigrated to Canada. So we spent about a year in Hong Kong and in a refugee camp, and I was with all my aunts and uncles and cousins there, and we were all filing paperwork in different places, and anywhere around the world that would take us, we all just left. Like my aunts left first, they went to Sweden, then my uncles, they ended off in France. I got relatives in Switzerland and in England as well. So Canada picked us up. So we went to Canada. I think I was around 2.5, 3 years old when we finally got there.
Yeah.
And so I spent most of my life there, majority of my life, and including education and everything. And then around 2004, my father decided to come back to Vietnam because my grandfather's still buried in Ha Giang, actually, near Bac Quang.
Yeah.
So I went back with him because he wanted to fix up the gravesite. Before it was just kind of like almost like an unmarked grave, but he wanted to build something grand for him. So I went back with my dad around that time, and we spent about a month fixing up the gravesite up in Ha Giang, and we spent a little bit of time in Hanoi. We also have relatives here as well. So after that, my dad went back to Canada, and he was like, well, my job here is done. Went back to his Canadian life. And about maybe like half a year after that, I was like, I feel like maybe I should go back by myself and see what Vietnam is all about. And so I went back here, and I never really left it, actually, after that.
So when was that? That was
2004. So I guess I've been here for that long now. So 2004.
It's almost 20 years.
Yeah.
I didn't know you had been here for that long.
Yeah.
So
It's
what was your...
changed a lot in the past 20 years, I guess, yeah.
What's the biggest changes you've seen?
Well, when I first came here, even up in Ha Giang, I would bring out my camera and I would take pictures. People would be so curious. They would hold my hand and look at my tattoos, and and they wanted to see the photos on my digital camera. Now, if I go up there, they don't care about any of that stuff. They're just so used to it now. Yeah. But just seeing the amount of commercialism that's taken over in Vietnam in the past, I would say probably in the last 15 years I've seen it just skyrocket.
Yeah.
When I first came here, not like I was craving it, but there wasn't really a good place to get a pizza or a hamburger. I think it was pepperonis, frescoes were the only ones still around. But now, Mexican food, hamburgers, all that stuff is here, and great choices too.
Yeah. So what were you doing when you first came here, and how did that all develop?
Well, I was just really bumming around, actually. Yeah, I wasn't really doing all too much. I had freelance. When I first came here, that's what's the one good thing about Vietnam, right? There's so much opportunity here. I remember sitting in a cafe, and I saw The Word, the magazine, The Word, and I was like, there's a English written magazine in Vietnam. So I'm just flipping through it, and then I was like, I'll flip back to the first page. So I flipped back to the first page, and I saw all the credits, and I just emailed them and I said, hey, let me write for you guys. And next thing you know, they're like, okay.
We had the same experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't do that in Canada. You can't just pick up a magazine. It's like, I think I want to be a journalist now.
Yeah.
I'll just email this. And but that's what happened here. And so that was one of my first jobs jobs, I say, because it's still like freelance, and you know, like it became a thing where I was writing an article like once every month. Yeah. So yeah, I guess.
When I was writing for Word, you were always like, I never saw you in the meetings, but you were always on the roster of like, I think the whole time.
Because I was still
there.
freelance.
Yeah. So what led to you opening Northern Soul Bar? Because sorry for anyone who's listening, Haivu owns Northern Soul Bar in Hoan Kiem, which is probably the best soul bar in Vietnam, I would say.
Man, thank you.
It's actually the only one that I even know of. It's definitely.
Well, technically, that's why we're the best, right?
Bar. No, it would probably be the best either way. It's a very good bar, very good location. Which I also want to ask you about is how you got the location. But first, what inspired you to set it up?
Well, through my travels, I ended up meeting who's now my wife, Hoan.
Yeah.
And she was working in a bar in the old quarter, and it was very smoky, and you know, it was one of those small bars where, you know, like people would come in there, and sometimes, you know, they would be rude to her, and she never really liked the job. She took it because her cousin opened it, and she, you know, wanted to like help her cousin, so she was learning how to do drinks along the way. And it was like one of those just small smoky places that, you know, like where everybody was doing balloons, you know, like and so, you know, like I met her because I know her cousin, so, you know, I was drinking there from time to time too, and she just never really liked it. I said, well, quit then, you know. And so she ended off like quitting, and so we were just you know, like together, and, you know, like both just you know, like wondering what we should do. And so I was like, well, why don't we look for a location? We can open a bar together, and then, you know, like we'll open it in a way that, you know, like we want to run it. So, you know, that's why, you know, like Northern Soul is like smoke free in the general bar area, plus there's no balloons and no shisha and things like that. And so yeah, like we ended off just doing it on our own.
And when was that?
That was about 3 years ago. You know, like we got hit with COVID like for like 2 years, but yeah, I guess it's about 3.5 years now.
And how have you sort of seen, since COVID, how have you seen the recovery?
It's slow, right? But like we're in a good area where we see everything happen like immediately in real time, right?
Literally, you have like a view of Ta Hien.
Yeah. So it was a slow process. Like there was a time there where Vietnam was allowed to open, but everywhere else in the world was shut, and Vietnam closed their borders. You know it, right?
Yeah.
But so we were allowed to open, but there was really no reason for us to open, because since we're so catered towards foreigners and tourists, we would open and no one would come in. You know, we were wasting more money on electricity and you know, keeping things afloat for when we could have just closed and you know, saved that, right? So, but now, you know, like anytime, you know, like there seems to be like some type of like travel deal or something, we see it immediately. Like there could be an influx of Korean people, and I could just tell immediately that there's a sale on, like, you know, like Vietnam Airlines Korean flights or something.
You see that in
yeah,
the
I
bar?
see it in real time. Yeah, and like yeah. So now that they say that they're going to make the visas easier to get, like, you know, like I think we're going to see that very soon too.
Oh, that's good. And then I also want to talk to you about, so not only do you have a bar, but you also have your own brand of beer, Northern Soul Beer.
Yeah.
So how did that come about, and what are some of the challenges you've sort of had with that in entering into the market of having craft beer?
Well, the thing is, yeah, when the bar first opened, you know, like I was sitting with my friend who also has a restaurant and a bar, and he just branded his beer like named after his bar. And I go, what's that all about? Where did you get that? Again, things can be very easy in Vietnam, right? And so he gave me a phone number, and it turns out it was like a white label thing where, you know, the brewery would make a beer, like, well, actually it's their own beer, it's already made, and we could just slap our name on it. That could be Northern Soul Beer, you know? And I got in a conversation with them. I go, well, if that's kind of like the way you work, how about I give you a recipe then? And you can make this beer, and it could be specific for us then. And I have a friend back in Canada who runs, he's the head brewer of a pretty successful brewery in Canada. And so we were shooting back and forth about like, you know, what beers we like and what we wanted. And that's how we came up with the Northern Soul Classic Pilsner and the Super Bad IPA. And so this brewery was making the beers for us. But it was a cash deal. It was like not under the table, but you know, like there's no taxes paid on it. So it was specifically just sold right to our bar.
Yeah.
Right. And after COVID, you know, like because you know, during that lockdown, all that beer went bad and spoiled, and so we had to throw it all out. And so I was stuck starting at zero again.
Yeah.
So I go, do I want to go with these guys who can, like, you know, like just make a beer for me, or you know, this might be a good time to, like, you know, like get the motor running on this. And so I found another brewery, Fur Brew, and they make our beer now. And with that, you know, like orders, receipts, you know, taxes paid. And so with this, we can actually like go out and, you know, like sell it to whoever we want to sell it to.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And do you still see it? You said that doing these things can be quite easy to get the ball rolling in Vietnam. Do you still see that that's a thing? Do you see that as a declining thing for people doing business here, for newcomers now? If someone wants to come and set up in hospitality, say, do you think it's getting more difficult as the country gets more commercialized?
It is becoming more difficult, right? Like, you know, like going with Fur Brew now, you know, like because we're with an established business already, it's easier for us. But if I was still with the previous brewery, chances are we can't make it with them anymore, because, you know, there's health inspections now, there's you know, like barcodes and things needed, you know, like now, like when we had to redo our labels, because now that we're doing it professionally, everything has to be in Vietnamese and in English. And so, you know, like there's difficulties, but it's all just little nitpicking things that, you know, like when the time arises, you kind of adapt to it. Like the newest one that we had to go through with the bar is that you can't call your business Northern Soul Rooftop Bar anymore. You have to have a Vietnamese
like
part to your name.
Công ty,
Công ty or
TNH.
Quán Northern Soul Rooftop Bar. So you just have to add that word in there. Yeah. So, you know, like it just seems like they always just kind of think of something, and then we just have to adapt to it. There was a while there, it's still ongoing, but about like 6 months ago, they said we had to like tear down all the signs that are outcropping in the old quarter. So now if you go to Ta Hien, what used to kind of look like, you know, Times Square, where you got like, you know, like all the flashing lights and, you know, beer Saigon, beer Hanoi, it's all gone now. Yeah. And I don't know how long that's going to stay a rule, but, you know, that's the way it is now.
So there's a lot of adapting on the spot to new regulations. And do you find that they tend to come in and then change later on? Like, do you find there's flip-flopping, or is it generally quite a solid direction?
No, there's a lot of flip-flopping. Like even, you know, like when we had to take our sign down, we were talking to the rest of our business neighbors in that area, and they were like, you know, like, we're keeping our sign in the back area just in case, like, you know, like when we could put it back up, we have our sign in the back area too. But yeah, you know, like there's these rules where they say like it's a pedestrian area now, you know, like there's no motorbikes allowed to park here, and all the, you know, the plastic chairs need to be moved in. And, you know, like, yeah, the rules are followed, but within like a couple months I go back to the same area and it's all just there again. And so things don't get reinforced all too much. Either that, or they're just relaxed on the rules.
What would you say is the biggest challenge you've had running a business as a foreigner in Vietnam? Although I would also be interested to know if the fact that you were born here, right? So, I mean, in terms of nationality, you're a Vietnamese or a Canadian citizen?
I'm a Canadian citizen. Like, I don't have anything, well, I have my birth certificate, but yeah, like I don't have much to like back up my claim of being Vietnamese. Because when we left, like in the cover of nights, you know, like in a shoddy boat, you know, floating for like a month to Hong Kong, right?
Do you remember any of that?
No, I don't remember. And that's why, you know, like my daughter is like what, a year and 1 month now. And so yeah, like I'm just wondering like what she will remember, because we're giving her a lot of like memories now, but chances are she won't remember this stuff up until like I would say 2.5 to 3 years old. She'll start remembering, because that's the things that I remember. But yeah, like what was I saying?
We were talking about the challenges.
Oh yeah.
Doing business.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't remember that time, but like, so backing up, me being Vietnamese, like my mom just took a whole bunch of like photographs and then we all left. And so now I can probably still go through the process to get like a dual citizenship, but again, that would lead to just a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like in Canada, you have to file, you know, your income. If you have dual citizenship, I have to file my income here as well. So it's just better if I just leave it separate.
Yeah.
Because
easy administration.
What I have proven is that I was born in Vietnam, and so I have like a visa that is for, you know, like Viet Kieu. So I can have, you know, like multi-entry as much as I want within the duration of my passport, which is like 5 years.
Okay.
And then, you know, like I could just file it for it again in 5 years. But then on top of that, I don't even need that anymore because I have a Vietnamese wife, and so I have like, you know, my temporary residency here as well.
Can you explain that a bit though? So you have Viet Kieu can have a like a visa that just kind of goes in the passport for the duration of the passport, and they can come in and out.
It's the exact same kind of sticker that you have that takes over the entire page of your passport.
Yeah.
Except it's a different kind of passport, I think, or visa. And yeah, it's like I don't even know what it's called. It's like green in color when the other one's kind of like brownish red, right? So yeah, and it's good for multi-entry. Yeah.
Well, that's useful.
Yeah.
But you're married now, so it doesn't really.
Yeah. And even that, I don't even really know how to file for it, because like I bought my ticket from like a Vietnamese vendor in Canada, and they dealt with all of that. They did all that for me. Yeah.
And on the note of that, do you see many Viet Kieu coming back to Vietnam? Like do you see that like as an increasing theme, and people coming back and doing?
I don't see a lot of Viet Kieu. I really don't. Like I think Vietnam right now is like kind of like a hot spot for tourism, because they still hear that it's cheap, and they still hear that like, you know, like it's still kind of untouched land in a way. Like it's a place that people really want to explore when they've seen enough of Thailand, or they've seen enough of Cambodia. They really want to see Vietnam. But as far as Viet Kieu, I don't see it a lot, because maybe I'm kind of like the anomaly, but when there's so much hardship for us to leave this country, not a lot of people have the desire to come back. Like my sister, you know, like she never really wanted to come back. She just was here recently because, you know, I just had the baby, so, you know, she wanted to see her, you know, her niece. But besides that, like, you know, like if I didn't have any ties here, she would not come. Yeah. She loved it here. You know, she was still like, you know, like it was nice seeing, you know, Vietnam through fresh eyes, because I've been here for so long that, you know, like I don't really get like any culture shock anymore. But, you know, like everything where, you know, like going through the old quarter, when I would just kind of like, you know, like not care about this or that, she was like stopping here, stopping there. I like that. Like seeing that.
How about your own family now? How do you find raising a family in Vietnam and comparing that to Canada? Or
you know, like I haven't brought Sophia to Canada yet, but, you know, like from what I see, it's, I don't know, it's it seems like it's much easier here, right? It seems like everybody is very helpful here, you know, like even walking down the street, and, you know, like I'm eating pho like on the street, right, with my wife, and, you know, like they'll just bring a small bowl for Sophia, and they won't charge us for it. Or like walking by, like, you know, like people are selling fruit on the street, you know, they would just give like Sophia a little piece. Everybody's just so friendly and helpful, right? You know, what I can say is that education here will probably be very expensive, especially if we want to, you know, send her to like a foreign school, international school.
It's gonna be expensive.
Yeah, but you know, just as far as like raising children, everybody just loves children here.
Yeah.
And, you know, and not that we do it a lot, but we can turn a blind eye a little bit. Like when Sophia's in Canada, you know, I'm gonna be like a hawk staring at her all the time, making sure that she's, you know, like safe. But here it's like, you know, like just let her run around the cafe, you know.
Yeah, people are much more receptive to kids here, I think.
Yeah.
Because there's so many more kids in Vietnam, I find, than the UK, and you probably feel this about Canada too, right? Is you don't see as many children in the West, I find. In Vietnam, it's like everyone seems to have kids fairly young, and then the family is much more respected, I guess.
What I can complain about, unless you find it, and I found it, is like places for, you know, children actually to like run around and be safe, right? Like if like in Westlake where we are now, and it might be a little more difficult, or you could find a park, but like in the apartment complex that we're in, like there's a playground, and you know, it's a good safe space, because if you can't find it, then you know, you're running around with motorbikes and cars, you know, in the air, you know, just little things like that I worry about now.
And what would you say has been the most defining moment of your time in Vietnam?
Well, I could say, you know, like, sounds as cheesy as it is, I followed my dreams here, right? You know, I remember like when I used to play in a band, this was like maybe about, we broke up about like maybe 15 years ago, and you know, band members were like, you know, well, what are you gonna do now with your life? And I was like, I'll go to Vietnam again, and maybe I come back to Canada, I'll open a bar. I said that. When I come back to Canada, I'll open a bar. And so, and I ended up opening a bar here, you know, like that's a defining moment, but like also, closing shop.
Closing soon.
Yeah. So, when I was first coming here, I had like a little digital SLR camera, and I was taking photos, and you know, I never thought that, you know, like I would be a professional photographer. Like, you know, like I guess when you get paid to do something, it's professional, and so I've gotten there already. Having a baby, finding my wife, like there's a lot of defining moments, you know, like there's a lot of good things that happened to me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
cheers, man.
Thank you for taking the time, and to everyone watching, please check out Northern Soul Bar in Hoan Kiem, and
cheers.